Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stared Stats. Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. And Oklahoma's finally made their change. The offensive coordinator announced today it is going to be Ben Arbuckle, as you could see on the screen, the 29-year-old offensive coordinator from Washington State. And Tyler, with how things are going this year, you would think, Oklahoma fans been through the ringer, been through all this stuff, and are people happy that we finally have an offensive coordinator announced? No, of course not. Why would anything be simple this year? People are divided. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But right now, Oklahoma at least has an offensive coordinator. There were people already starting to worry on social media today if an announcement would even be made. There is a guy. It's Ben Arbuckle. And, I mean, we talked about this, and everyone knows this if you followed Oklahoma, if you're new, an Oklahoma fan. If this doesn't work out, obviously Brent Venables will not be the head coach at Oklahoma next year. I think everyone's already well aware of those stakes.
It was a situation where no matter who he chooses, the pick has to work out. That's kind of, the big part of this. We know Brent Venables can coach defense. It's clear he has really restacked the deck for OU from a defensive standpoint in a way we haven't seen in a long time. But offense drives the world of football, right? You got to be able to put up points, and that's the focus of this hire. Can they find somebody to put up points? Maybe Arbuckle's the guy to lead it.
Absolutely. And of course, looking over Oklahoma's press release here, mentioning some quick stats, Washington State 12th nationally in points per game with 36.8. Washington State went 8-4 this year, and you can kind of see some of all the stats on the screen. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you look at what they've been able to do. It's been impressive. Washington State's had a good offense for a majority of the year. They've had it, when they've needed to against Texas Tech, Washington, games like that. And I think the thing that most Oklahoma fans are divided over really does come down to a schematic thing. The fact that they hear, Washington State, Ben Arbuckle, was at Houston Baptist, now Houston Christian with one Zach Kitley. But if you remember the Bailey Zappi teams where he eventually transferred to Western Kentucky, Ben Arbuckle was kind of a part of that scheme under Kitley. So a lot of people think of this, they think, okay, more pure air raid, Mike Leach style of it. We're going to throw the ball 45 to 50 times a game. And that's not really what this is. It's been kind of described to me as more of you think of what Lincoln Riley's offenses looked like. They're going to be able to run the ball if they need to, or at least make the attempt to. They're not going to try to we're going to throw it for throwing its sake. They're not going to try to, I would hope, put the square peg in the circle hole, so to speak. But either way, I'm intrigued to see how this plays out because I'm not opposed 100% to the idea of running the air raid in the SEC. It's already been tried before. If you remember those Mike Leach teams at Mississippi State, he was able to come in and put up just giant numbers. That COVID year in 2021 put some good numbers up as well. It's just going to have to be, how does it work with Oklahoma's talent and what they have?
Yeah, and, looking at the early statements from Coach Arbuckle, he kind of put one out there tonight. Obviously said, hey, excited to go work with Coach Venables and crew, likes the vision. And he admitted, his philosophy is not only being an attacking offense, but making his scheme suit what he's got in terms of talent, which is refreshing to hear because I think in modern day college football, seemingly the best schemes nowadays do revolve around, hey, I might have an electric quarterback, I might have a dynamic run game, so we're going to be able to work around that. And he, admitted he wants to be able to do that for them, look at what they've got talent-wise, take that inventory, and then mold around that. So that's kind of refreshing to hear, comforting to hear. We'll see if he can be able to do that at OU.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the quarterback situation. I do want to mention Arbuckle's quarterback record, obviously talking about Bailey Zappi a little bit, what he was able to do there at Western Kentucky. And then also Cam Ward, who, remember, was at Washington State last year prior to transferring to Miami. Cam Ward put up great numbers there. That's why he hit the portal to go somewhere bigger. And then, of course, the other name that you're going to hear, especially Oklahoma fans, when it comes to the portal quarterback situation is John Mateer, who is the quarterback at Washington State right now. It's expected, or I've seen some people posting that he's already in the portal. I don't know if that's really true or not. So I'm not going to say, as of, Monday night when we're recording this, that has happened. It would not shock me at all if it does happen. And it wouldn't shock me at all if he comes to Oklahoma. And if so, that creates an entire quarterback room situation of then what happens to Jackson Arnold, what happens to Michael Hawkins Jr., who stays, who leaves. That would be almost an entirely different discussion, Tyler. But if Mateer comes, I would have to think that Arnold would leave at that point.
Yeah, I'm not so sure even if Mateer does enter the portal that he's guaranteed to come to OU because there is other changes going on at
Absolutely.
Washington State. So he's got enough of a rep now to say, hey, I want to evaluate my options. So we saw Cam Ward, again do that in the wake of some great success under Arbuckle. So I guarantee that would be come to OU. And the point I want to make here with those quarterbacks when it comes to Arbuckle's track record, right? People are going to say, hey, he's only 29. He's never seen competition like the SEC. You might want, and I've seen this discussion already. Some people wanted maybe a little bit more experienced guy that had some of that experience with the SEC or at least SEC adjacent. But you look at what Ben Arbuckle has worked with his entire career. It's not like he's been just blessed with 5-star talent. He's not been at a location where he's had a 5-star quarterback. Cam Ward was not a highly rated quarterback coming out of high school. Bailey Zappi, same thing. Mateer, not a highly rated quarterback. So I am curious to see what happens if Arbuckle gets there, OU, and says, hey, I want to give one of these highly touted prospects, Jackson Arnold or Michael Hawkins, and see what I could do with them. I'm curious to see how that conversation is going to go because this will be, for the first time in his career, a offense that theoretically, on paper, is stacked to the brim with high talent, something he has not had in his coaching career yet.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings up the next point I have. And I've seen some Washington State fans talk about this and that, yeah, some of them are sad that Arbuckle's leaving, but you look at games like what happened last week, where it's 15-14, you lose to Wyoming, the offense can't move the ball in the second half. That's something I've seen Washington State fans already talking about of if there was one real struggle we had, it's just the kind of inconsistency in the second half of the season. Some games the offense looked fine. Sometimes it stalls around. Third quarters, especially, it seems coordinators are able to adjust a bit. Arbuckle hadn't been making that yet, and some of that is youth. Like you've mentioned, only 29 years old. That you think of being put in that kind of situation. That's the only thing that worries me a bit. Is being that young, having to go up the ranks this quick, how ready is he for the SEC? But as you mentioned, he's never had talent like he's going to have at Oklahoma. Some of those things like that. That's the only thing that puts a bit of a concern in my mind is when you see games like this for Washington State, we're thinking, well, this is a 2-9 at the time Wyoming team, and you could only put 14 points on them. You could only run for 3 yards a carry. Mateer played, okay at times, 16 for 22, but 182, a TD, and an interception. Those are the kind of things that put some worry in your head.
Yeah, and I think that's fair concern. The youth is something you can't just say, he'll be fine. I mean, this is a whole new level, and it is pretty much his biggest proving ground to be able to come in and try to have some success on pretty much the biggest stage you could have in college football in the SEC. That being said, Brent Venables, when he first came to Oklahoma, was 29 as co-defense coordinator. And that turned out to be really good for OU at the time. And Lincoln Riley, you're going to get a lot of comparisons from Arbuckle to Riley just because they were both so young. They're both West Texas guys. Arbuckle, we've talked about it, Canadian kid. In terms of his background, went to West Texas A&M for his playing career eventually. Riley from Mule Shoes. They sound the same almost. So you're going to get a lot of
I saw that earlier where they nearly sound the exact same.
Yeah. So, and that's just the nature of being those West Texas guys. So there is a lot of pressure for Arbuckle to live up to. Yeah, there's probably some lessons, he could definitely learn from this past season. And I think you'll see him really try to embrace it. I mean, one thing that Coach Venables talked about, and I think you can see it in his interviews, he's mature beyond his years. He doesn't talk and act like a 29-year-old would. He just goes about his business coaching, and he really tries to put the best confidence into his players. So I'm curious to see how it works out. It's one of those hires that I think were there safer options out there, possibly, but when you talk about upside, like Brent Venables said, hey, you know what? We're going to give this kid a chance because he might have the highest ceiling in terms of all the options available. May not be the safest. There is a little risk there because of the youth and everything. But if you're swinging for upside and you're a guy who needs to save your job, this is probably the guy you're good with for that reason.
Absolutely. And just to kind of look at the numbers one last time for Oklahoma, what Arbuckle has to try to beat. You know this, what I'm about to say, Tyler. It is not a high bar to clear. It's not even a medium bar to clear. If he could get this thing, just a little bit off the ground. Oklahoma fans this year, we've had this conversation. If we were just even average offensively, how different would the season look? Some of that's health of, the wide receiver core, things like that. They looked at an Oklahoma team that only put up 24 points per game, just could not get things going at times, just absolutely ugly at some points. I mean, you look at it, he had 6 yards per pass attempt, had the 6 interceptions, 46 sacks given up on the season. Bauer Sharp ends up being your leading receiver. To some people, that gave them some very unfortunate moments that I saw on social media when people would mention that stat to someone. But it was an offense that did not look good at times. And sometimes it looked beyond awful. Not looking good was usually a good day for Oklahoma. To look just above bad. Not even above average, just above being bad was the good days for Oklahoma this season. And so I'm intrigued to see what Arbuckle does. I really am. I want to believe in him. I want to believe that everything's going to go well and that he can help really turn this thing around. The only real concern I have, and this isn't even a concern on him, to be honest, this is more of a hidden in the kind of lower parts of the press release that's been the sentence that you've seen already probably blown up if you're an Oklahoma fan on social media. Brent Venables saying, I'm incredibly excited to see our offense reach new heights under Ben's guidance and leadership, working alongside the rest of our offensive staff of Coach Joe John Finley, Bill Bedenbaugh, DeMarco Murray, and Emmett Jones. And that is what's getting at people so far today. And again, I don't even know if that'll mean anything. Joe John Finley could be gone after the bowl game for all we know. There's a very real possibility that happens. I don't want to say that is a definitive everyone's coming back. But my goodness, with how much you've seen Oklahoma fans complain about it, and we've both been a part of it at times, me more than you, I know that, Tyler. But if you see some of these guys next year and things start going south real quick, you're going to start to have that conversation of why did we bring these people back? What are we doing? And Oklahoma will be right back in the head coaching search next year. And that's the one thing I'm concerned about just a little bit. And that's something that's not even on, Ben Arbuckle. He's kind of getting thrown into that situation if something like that goes down.
Yeah, I think that's while I can understand the concern, I don't know if the, Marco Murray's, the Emmett Joneses, even the Joe John Finleys of the world necessarily deserve to be just thrown aside at the end of the season. I know you could question some of their talent evaluation, right? That being said, though, as well, when you have the injuries you do, I don't know if you could necessarily hold it against some of these individual position coaches because not everything was being able to work the right way because you were so banged up.
Absolutely. And Emmett Jones definitely gets a pass. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do when you have 6 and now 7 wide receivers injured. I don't hold that against him. Bedenbaugh, I know a lot of people have been at him this year for the way the offensive lines looked. I've been a part of that at times, but some of that is just injuries and things like that. Of course, when you have, Michael Fasusi and people like that coming in with this recruiting class, you're hoping that things get a lot more back to normal there. The main one I'm going to complain about, and it's the one you've seen most Oklahoma fans have complained about this, is Joe John Finley. And some of that's because he got thrust into being the play caller for the second half of the season. Some of that is just Bauer Sharp. People have had PTSD from watching Bauer Sharp play, and that's just, that's unfortunate, but that's how it's been this season. I'm sure Sharp would be the first to tell you that, hey, I've made a lot of mistakes. He'd be the first one to tell you, just keep getting better. But I do not want to see Joe John Finley back. I really don't. And I can make that as clear as day. I do not want to see him back as a coach for Oklahoma. I just do not want to see it. If he comes back, that's going to be strike one. And having a strike one before the season even starts is not going to be good for this team.
I guess my question is, other than having to play Batter Sharp a lot due to the injuries, what did Joe John Finley necessarily do that was so egregious? That's where I get hung up. The Seth Luttrell deal I can understand, right? And I know they were co-offensive coordinators, so there is some shared blame there. But I do feel like in the back half of the season, once you made the change from Luttrell to handed it over more to Joe John Finley, once you got rid of Luttrell, there was improvement there. Now, was it stark enough to go, oh my God, Joe John Finley is a great mind in college football? I don't know about that, but considering to what he was dealt with, you could tell there were some things they did different. There's some things they tried and said, hey, let's see if it can work. And you saw a mixed bag of that. Obviously, the Alabama game being the peak. That was a well put together game plan. There's no doubt about that, and that Joe John gets credit for that. But you go to the next week, the LSU game, and it's not great, right?
Exactly.
It looked kind of like the same old, same old. And part of that was your defense was getting toasted, so you're having to do things that you know you're not very good at, anyways, this year. So I don't necessarily put that all on Joe John.
Yeah, I think to me, it's more of just a, and Bauer Sharp being the main guy, you can kind of blame that on whatever you want to, but I think it's the idea that the tight end room being that depleted as it is, that, surely there's someone that can step up, and there's just no one. There's just nobody there. And that becomes where's the depth at? What is the recruiting at? When you've got guys like Devon Mitchell, who's a 4-star coming in, people just think, where's he at? 4-star freshman. He doesn't even travel sometimes. Where is this kid at? Were people just trying to figure out where is he? And it turns into so many different things of just, when you're able to go back and watch older Oklahoma games, there always seems to be a tight end somewhere doing something, making an impact on the game. And the fact that it feels like it's been a few years, regardless of if that's even true or not, sometimes the idea of it becomes more important than the reality. And that's where we're at, I think, at least in that part.
Yeah, and that's fair criticism, but that's where I'm like, I kind of put that in the same boat as all the other, coordinator spots and positions for the position coaches in general, where no matter who you are on this Brett Venables staff, except for Ben Arbuckle, right, because he's newly brought in, if nothing changes, then those guys know that along with Venables, they better get together next year.
Exactly.
And, to me, that'd be a fair rope, right? Now, am I saying that you have to keep Joe John on staff? No. But if you're going to single him out, I guess my point is it's not entirely fair. Either you single him out and you go, hey, what about all these other coaches? Like if you're really willing to part from Joe John already, right? You probably ought to go ahead and move for Beanball. I mean, that's it to me. They're all kind of the same boat. I guess is what I'm getting at. Where
Yeah.
if you think it was bad enough this year for Joe John to get fired, you probably should move on for the rest of them too.
Yeah, and I get that sentiment, and that's where I'd be, without some of these injuries, I would definitely be on board, as bad as what I'm about to say is, I would be on board with, okay, let's just pack it up, get some of these people on the way out. But having as many injuries as you did, I think you can kind of 50-50 on the staff there. Like I was talking about, DeMarco might be next on the list for a lot of people. He already is for a decent minority of the fan base. But we'll have to see how everything plays itself out. But either way, Ben Arbuckle, the new offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. And so, folks, as always, if you enjoyed the video, just a little discussion. We did this when Seth Luttrell got fired. So we figured, it probably would be the best thing to do it again, both being Oklahoma fans. But at the end of the day, if you enjoyed this little discussion, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to always be notified when new videos come out. And as always, feel free to leave a comment down below. It only takes a minute or two out of your day to, leave a comment, subscribe, do all those things there. But it does mean a lot to us. It really does. We do enjoy reading them and, discussing and doing. And if you say something we like or something we think we can kind of make into a point, we'll bring it up on the show. We like having that discussion going.
Yeah, if you're an Oklahoma fan, or even if you're not, what do you think of this hire? I mean, is this a good hire for OU? Is it too risky? What's the pulse on it? What's the pulse?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, I think that's the big thing. It's a very high risk situation, but that high reward is also there as well. So, folks, until next time, have a good one, everybody.